The name Vlasov, the general who was once hailed as Stalin's favorite commander, but later, after his surrender to German troops, was branded a traitor and collaborator, became the personification of betrayal. While the story of Andrei Vlasov is widely publicized and known to many, few know about another Vlasov, the German Walter von Seydlitz-Gersbach. My hero was born in 1888 into an aristocratic family of hereditary military men, where strict morals and military discipline reigned. He was one of many children, 5 brothers and 4 sisters. It is noteworthy that 2 of Walter's brothers gave their lives on the battlefields of the First World War, becoming victims of the bloody massacre. In fact, Walter himself was not left out of this conflict, taking an active part in the First World War, fighting on the Eastern Front as part of the German Army. Already in the first battle in 1914, he showed courage but was wounded several times, lost a finger on his hand, and in July of the following year received a serious foot injury, which, however, could not break his fighting spirit and prevent his further participation in the campaign. In the fall of 1915, Walter was transferred to the Western Front, where he participated in a number of key and significant battles of that time, including the fierce Battle of Ypres in 1917, known for the use of chemical weapons. Before the First World War, Walter had reached the rank of lieutenant, and by 1917 he had been promoted to captain, which testified to his professionalism and merits. During his participation in the First World War, he was awarded a number of awards, including 2 Iron Crosses, a Silver Wound Badge, the Hanseatic Cross, and the Order of the House of Hohenzollern, confirming his bravery and dedication to service. Walter's military career continued to develop rapidly in the interwar period, when the world was engulfed in political instability and a new conflict was brewing. In 1919, he was appointed commander of a battery, and already in 1933, he became commander of a regiment, which spoke of his professional growth and the trust of the command. He met the beginning of World War II with the rank of colonel, being on the border with the Netherlands, ready for new challenges. Before the start of the Battle of Stalingrad, von Seydlitz-Gersbach, who received the rank of Major General in December 1939, had actively participated not only in the capture of the Netherlands, from which the Rijkscommissariat Netherlands was formed after the implementation of the Dutch operation of 1940, but also in the French military campaign, where his division played an important role, contributing to the breakthrough of the Maginot Line, which was considered impregnable. Subsequently, the general's division was transferred to the Eastern Front, where the fiercest battles of World War II unfolded. During the operation to encircle Nivelles, units under Walter's command fought hard battles, preventing the breakthrough of Red Army units in the area of the village of Kulm, while showing exceptional resilience for this. In addition to the already existing Knight's Iron Cross received after the French campaign, Walter was awarded oak leaves and promoted to lieutenant general, which was a recognition of his merits. We ask you to subscribe to our channel and put a like so that you can hear many more interesting stories about World War II and the opinions of all sides of the participants about certain events. After receiving the new rank of lieutenant general, he was in reserve for several months, and in March 1942, at the head of a battle group, he conducted a successful operation to unblock the Second Corps surrounded by Soviet troops near Demyansk, demonstrating his strategic skills. Then, as commander of the 51st Corps as part of Paulus' army, he took part in the Second Battle of Kharkov, which ended with the encirclement of the advancing units of the Red Army. Initially, the Battle of Stalingrad was also very successful for the German troops. In mid-September, the Corps under the command of von Seydlitz-Gersbach captured Mamiev-Kurgan, and at the end of September, it advanced close to the Volga. But these successes turned out to be the last for the celebrated general. In November, it became obvious to Walter that Paulus's army was facing an imminent catastrophe, and in this regard, he repeatedly insisted that Paulus take immediate measures to counter the Soviet counteroffensive, but his arguments were rejected. Paulus did not heed the requests of the Corps commander, which led to predictable consequences. As a result, the German army as von Seydlitz-Schurzbach had predicted, found itself in a tight encirclement. A new dispute broke out between the generals. Paulus continued to insist on strict adherence to Hitler's order to remain in the besieged city, while von Seydlitz-Schurzbach was convinced of the need to break out of the encirclement. On January 25, 1943, Walter made a last attempt to convince Paulus, offering him to surrender, but received a categorical refusal. This time, Walter decided to disobey the order, issuing his own order, allowing commanders of regiments and battalions to independently make decisions about surrendering on January 31st. Von Seydlitz-Schurzbach was taken prisoner and forced to cease his participation in hostilities. Walter was taken to a special Krasnogorsk camp, where other high-ranking officers of the Hitler Army were also kept, including Paulus himself. It was there that von Seydlitz-Schurzbach was recruited for further cooperation. The general was extremely outraged by the decisions made by the Führer, and even while in encirclement, he repeatedly and openly stated that he considered Hitler a traitor and the cause of the defeats. After the crushing defeat of the Germans in the Battle of Kursk in the summer of 1943, von Seydlitz-Schurzbach finally became convinced that Germany would inevitably lose the war, and therefore agreed to cooperate with the USSR. He became the head of the so-called Union of German Officers, an anti-fascist organization that included not only German prisoners of war, but also members of the Communist Party of Germany who fought against Nazism. Subsequently, Paulus also joined this organization. The main goal of the Union was to help the Soviet Union overthrow the Hitler regime and end the war. Von Seydlitz-Schurzbach and his associates actively participated in the distribution of anti-Nazi leaflets, in which they called on German soldiers to lay down their arms and surrender. The general also addressed his former comrades in arms by loudspeaker, urging them to surrender, claiming that they had shed an ocean of blood of peaceful people, and told about the horrors of the Hitler regime, emphasizing that Hitler's Eastern campaign had no support from many people in Germany. He sent letters with similar content to the commander-in-chief of the Third Reich, trying to convey his position to the top leadership. In addition, Walter repeatedly tried to obtain permission from the Soviet government to form units from captured German soldiers who would fight side by side with the Red Army against the troops of the Reich. But this initiative was unsuccessful, so the Union of German Officers remained exclusively a propaganda organization. After the end of World War II, the need for the Union disappeared, and the organization was dissolved in November 1945. Von Seydlitz-Schurzbach was not allowed to return home to Germany. In 1949, he applied for repatriation to the Soviet occupation zone of Germany, together with his family, which at that time lived in Verdun, which was under British control. At first, it seemed that Walter's request would be granted, but at that moment Paulus played a cruel joke on him. He wrote a letter to the head of the main directorate for prisoners of war and internees, in which he claimed that von Seydlitz-Schurzbach was not a reliable element, and that his family, which was located in the Western occupation zone, could induce him to move from the Eastern zone to them. Walter's request was rejected, and moreover, in 1950, he was convicted in a fabricated case of issuing and executing criminal orders. Other captured German generals acted as prosecution witnesses, which of course called into question the objectivity of the proceedings. Von Seydlitz-Schurzbach was sentenced to 25 years in prison. On the day of the verdict, Walter bitterly stated that he would have better died. For some time, von Seydlitz-Schurzbach spent in solitary confinement in the Novichokov prison, where, according to him, he was subjected to sophisticated torture, which consisted in the fact that a bright light bulb was turned on in his cell daily, which negatively affected his mental state. After a breakdown in 1954, Walter was transferred to the Moscow Butyrka prison, where the conditions of detention were milder. He owed his release to the Chancellor of the Federal Republic of Germany, Konrad Adenauer, who held difficult and lengthy negotiations with the Soviet leadership in Moscow. Walter returned to Germany, but before that, he sent a letter of thanks to the chairman of the Presidium of the Supreme Soviet of the USSR, Voroshilov. in which he expressed his heartfelt gratitude to the Supreme Soviet of the USSR for all the good things that I have experienced and learned here during my more than 12-year stay. Although von Seydlitz-Gersbach was able to reunite with his family, his former comrades in arms never forgave him for his cooperation with the USSR, considering him a traitor and trying to stay away from him. Walter himself, in one of the interviews, spoke about his stay in the Soviet state as follows. I loved Russia with all my heart, hated Hitler, but unfortunately, Stalin did not believe in my sincerity. Walter von Seydlitz-Gersbach died on April 28, 1976 in Bremen. On April 23, 1996, by a decision of the Prosecutor General's Office of the Russian Federation, he was fully rehabilitated, which became a restoration of justice in relation to this person. Goodbye. We were glad to see you on our channel. Don't forget to write comments, give likes, and subscribe to the channel.